Hello and welcome back to the show. This is Paul Asher again on Pulsecast 357. As I said to you earlier, this is a two-part series discussing relationships and sex. A minister once said that there's a couple of things that we usually, as human beings, you shy away from, and even though they're prevalent in our daily lives, we usually hesitant to bring these things up and talk about how they affect our lives. One of them is sex as well as finances. But today our focus is on relationships and sex. And I'm privileged to have another relationship coach and a sexpert. In other words, she's a sex expert. But that's not to say that she is a sex fiend or anything, but she just has a great knowledge in things of the sexual nature, just how it affects us as married couples and as people who are in love or are in a relationship, just how this particular piece of activity helps us or damages a relationship depending on the dynamics of it and the nature of it. So I'm happy to have Nikita Grady join me today. Stay tuned and you will learn something today. I promise you that. Ladies and gentlemen, as I promised you, this is a two-part series, and I'm very, very privileged to have Nikita Grady join me tonight to discuss another segment or another aspect of relationships, which is the sex part of things, and just how it has benefited us, if any at all, especially during this lockdown. And as I said earlier, that I'm sure that there's been a lot of rediscoveries and discoveries about each other, because now we saw a little bit more of each other, those who are married or those who are in a strong relationship or who are at home together. um, you know they have a lot to say about the effects of the lockdown. So tonight I have another relationship coach and also a sexpert. And as I said, it's the first I ever heard of this terminology. So you care to break it down for us and give us a little bit about your background?
Yes, absolutely. So I am a certified relationship and sexuality coach. I am also a certified master sexpert. Sexpert just means that I am an expert on the subject matter of sex. I was certified through the Dr. Rachel Institute and also through Loveology University. And in addition to coaching, I also have an online adult emporium, Sensational Vibes, where I sell adult novelty products. All of that. So I basically work with or do all things sexual, all things relating to sex.
Awesome. Well, thanks for that clarification there. A minister once said that, there's a few things in life that we almost always deal with, but we're hesitant to talk about them. We're, I guess, for all kinds of reasons, we shy away from certain topics. But I think, we're adults here and they're relevant. So I definitely see a good reason for us to bring some of these things up. Um, just how do you think or feel that the dynamics of relationships, have changed from back in the day and now, with having all kinds of scenarios play or creep into homes and into relationships, like social media and technology, for example, and the fact that, we are almost at liberty to do just whatever we please. We don't see our partners for maybe 8 to 10 hours a day and that sort of thing. How has the dynamics changed, in your opinion?
In my opinion, back in the day when our grandparents, let's say, were dating, they did a lot of courting. Our grandparents also they had the tendency to marry young. I think my grandparents married when they were 18 and 20. And they had 5 kids together. And a lot of older couples back in the day, they had big families. And whenever issues arose, they worked it out together. They talked through it and they moved on. It was kind of like, we really are together till death do us part type of situation. Whereas now, and I think social media plays a major part in this. Now it's like people have less tolerance. So when things go wrong in a relationship, the easiest thing to do is leave. And that's what people do. They leave. I think social media has given people the opportunity to see that they have options. So they're quick to say, okay, well, if you're not gonna be this way, because I like XYZ, and if you can't conform to this, then I'll go over here to this guy or this woman that I saw on social media, and maybe they can, you know, pick up where you left off. So I think social media has given people the ability to realize that there's more than, I think back in the day before social media, you really didn't get a chance to meet other people. So I'm sorry, I'm trying to get my thoughts together.
Okay.
Like now with technology, as you mentioned, you know, you have dating apps, you have Facebook, you have Instagram, you have Twitter, and it's easy to hop on any of these apps and see like a ton of people, whereas back in the day, they weren't presented with so many options, if that makes sense.
It does. So I want to latch on to the fact that you mentioned dating sites and that. I know some people who have hopped on dating sites and are in great, marvelous relationships today. So having said that, I think also that it has changed the dynamics of relationships, being covenants, to something that you know you could just basically water down and say to heck with it, because I can go online and find somebody that would be compatible based on what you read from their profile. Don't you think that it's a bit more detrimental to relationships? Or does it rather help because it's made it easier for people to find matching partners?
I think it depends on the people. I've seen online dating be successful, and I've seen it be a total disaster. One thing that I've noticed is you kind of have to be careful what you put into your profiles, because if you go on a date, if you create a profile on a dating site and you say, you know, I'm looking for ABC XYZ, then that person that you meet or that you match with can come say, hey, I'm ABC and XYZ. I'm everything that you're looking for. And they put on this facade, and then you guys start dating and you fall in love with their representation. Mm-hmm. And then once things get serious or possibly even lead to marriage, then that representation starts to fall off. And you see this true person is nothing like you thought they were. So that's an example of where it can be pretty bad. But I've seen people get on there and they're just kind of like, you know, I'm just having fun. And then they meet somebody and they hit it off, and then it does end in marriage. So I really think that online dating just boils down to the people that are utilizing those apps.
Do you think this lockdown helped any at all? I mean, we saw more of each other than before when, you know, we'd be away for 8 to 10 hours a day, working, doing all sorts of things. But now we were forced to look at each other all day long. Do you think it helped any?
With the pandemic, relationships went one or two ways. They either got better because now you're not rushing off to work, you're not coming home tired, like you're there with your partner, the person that you love, and you're in each other's companies. You guys get to spend this quality time that you wanted for so long. Or you've gotten shut up in a house with this person who you realize you're no longer compatible with, or maybe you never were compatible because you never really spent real quality time together, but just from, you know, in and out, you know, in between work and our busy schedules, you seem to be compatible and you fell in love with this person. So I think for the most part, the pandemic has helped. Even for those whose relationships have kind of taken a hit, I think it helped because it gave them the opportunity to sit back and evaluate. And they were able to say, okay, you know, where I thought my relationship is strong, it's really weak. You know, this is what's wrong. And they had that option to sit down, talk, or go to therapy or go to coaching and work through those issues, or they can make the decision to call it quits. But I think overall, the pandemic did some good to relationships.
But we had a situation where people were dying left, right, and center. I mean, and people were catching this disease, and you know, it was no respecter of anybody, and anybody could have just caught it. Right. People were still stepping out to the grocery stores and doing all kinds of stuff, and you could easily bring it home. But then you start to think, you know, we're in a situation where I could lose my partner, I could lose my wife or my husband or my better half, my boyfriend or whatever.
Right.
shouldn't that rather make us draw more to each other and reassess this whole situation and just hang on to each other a little bit more?
You would think that, but I've actually, since this pandemic started, I think we were about a month into the pandemic. I actually had a friend who called me and she said, you know, I'm tired of this guy. She was referring to her boyfriend, and she was like, I'll be glad when this lockdown is over so he can get out of my house. Like, I don't want to deal with him anymore. And I'm like, let's talk about it. Let's work through it. And she was like, no, I don't even want to try to figure it out. I just want him gone. So in that particular relationship, she realized very quickly that I don't want to be with this person for in the long run. And as a matter of fact, he gets on my nerve. Like, I don't even want to be with him now. So when that happens, you don't even think about, well, this person can leave for work today or go to the grocery store today and catch this virus and be gone tomorrow. In that moment, it's just, I don't want to be around this person.
What about singles, people who didn't have any partners for all kinds of reasons? Maybe they're just single or have lost their partners at some point in time and just had to be alone throughout this period. How do you think they coped with that?
Judging from the spike in sales that I had, I feel like single people, for the most part, probably handled it pretty well. Aside from being able to go on dates and meet people and maybe possibly hook up with people that they may have been seeing before the pandemic, I think single people probably use the time to assess themselves and get acquainted with their bodies. Like I said, I had a spike in sales, so I definitely feel like there was a lot of solo time, like masturbation time. I feel like people took that time to kind of figure out what they like or to do things that made them feel good in a sexual aspect. So I don't feel like single people really suffered a lot during the pandemic.
So if I'm getting what you're saying correctly, instead of having a physical somebody, these people resorted to the things that you stock in your store, like
Yes,
sex toys and that.
absolutely.
Are they good substitutes? And also, I know that society usually frowns on situations like that, and people who would rather indulge in such activities. What's your take on that, Nikita?
Um, I'm not going to say sex toys are a good substitute for a partner. I mean, nothing can really replace the real thing, the experience of having that human body, someone to actually hold you back, to kiss you back. But sex toys do give you the chance to really explore your body and learn things about yourself that you may or may not already know. And what I mean by that is a lot of my clients say that their partner doesn't really please them, or they're not able to achieve orgasms during sex. And one question I like to ask them is, do you know what it takes to make you reach an orgasm? Like, could you tell me how to make you have an orgasm if that was a conversation? And a lot of them don't know. And what I always tell them is, you need to take time to explore your body. Find out what types of touches you like. Find out what type of textures and speeds and vibrations and strokes and all of that. So until you are able to please yourself, you really can't expect someone else to do it.
But I was watching, I think it was a short little clip of yours, and you mentioned that, couples should not be afraid to schedule sex.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And I'm thinking, wow, this is the first I'm hearing of this, right?
Really? Yeah.
Yes. And just hearing you now saying that people should explore their bodies and try to get acquainted with what really arouses them. So, for example, a lady says to her guy, this is what takes me off. This is what I like.
Right.
I think that some people will find that either intimidating or a turnoff.
Mm-hmm.
Because maybe that approach they may find to be a little bit over the top. And I know also that most couples would try to be a little discreet about their habits just so that they don't give away too much, so that they're not judged. And I also know that, if you try to make any recommendations, it could come off as if you're trying to, maybe bring your past experiences into your home or onto your bed. And some people may find that intimidating. Don't you think that can happen?
So it's not about what you say, it's about how you say it. So, and when you say it. So it really all depends on when this is communicated. So if you're in the midst of your sexual encounter and you're like, hey, no, stop. I don't like it like that. Like, of course, that's going to be kind of intimidating. But if you're in the midst of your sexual encounter and you're like, oh, yes, baby, I like it right there. I love when you do that thing right there. That makes that person like, okay, she like what I'm doing. Or you can be like, or you can politely guide that person in the way that you want. And what I mean by that, like, let's say you have a couple that is sexually intimate right now, and the guy might be thrusting the woman too hard. Well, she can kind of use her hand to place it on his stomach and just kind of slow him down a little bit and make him not go so hard. So she's not verbally expressing that she doesn't like it, but she's physically showing him that she doesn't like that. You know what I'm saying? And so in that way, it doesn't come off as I'm trying to tell you how I had it in the past and I know I like it like that. Another thing I like to tell people is masturbate in front of your partner. Allow your partner to watch you, to watch how you move when you do certain things. And that'll give them an idea of how to please you as well. And you can even use that as a form of foreplay.
You're a relationship coach, right?
Yes.
I'm sure you've had clients who, want to hang on to their religion, and they want to approach their relationship, based on the principles that their religion teaches them. And some of these things that you're just discussing right now, may not readily be acceptable to some people, even though they may not shy away from trying to experiment. But that faith can sometimes get in the way of someone trying to express themselves. Because
Right.
I think that, sex is a very vital ingredient in couples' lives.
Right.
So what's your approach when you encounter such couples who are telling you, hey, Nikita, I think that's a little bit too much. I don't think that I'll be able to masturbate in front of my partner, or I don't know how he or she is going to take it. What would you say to them?
I would say, okay, if you're not comfortable with that, well, let's try something else. What would you be more comfortable with doing? I had a couple back in May, and it wasn't because of religious purposes, but I told them that they should probably try masturbating in front of each other together and watch each other. And the lady in the relationship said to me, she said, my husband isn't comfortable masturbating in front of me. And I said, okay, are you comfortable masturbating in front of him? She said, yes. I said, well, would he be comfortable watching you masturbate? And she said, yes. And then I asked her, do she think that he would be comfortable with her, getting him off using her hand or anything like that? And so that worked. So what you do in a situation like that is you go back and forth and you bounce ideas off of the client at that point and find out what they're comfortable with. And then you move forward based on that.
But as a professional, I'm sure you also could tell us that sex is not the most vital ingredient in a healthy relationship, right?
Yeah.
So
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, yeah, I'm listening.
So my biggest thing that I push to my clients are like, you want to work on establishing or reestablishing the intimacy in the relationship first, because the relationship, like you said, is not based on sex. And so in that aspect, I tell my clients to do things like, cook a meal with your partner. Go in the kitchen, use that time to come together. Take a walk around your neighborhood, take a walk around the park, hold hands, touch each other, laugh, smile, like get back to doing some of the things that you did when you first started dating. Like find out why you fell in love with this person. Or let this person know why you fell in love with them, and then revisit that. On my website, I actually have a couples challenge. It's a 5-day challenge, and it has every day I send out a challenge, or it's something simple. Like I said, something like cooking with your partner in the kitchen or taking a walk. And it tells you to do these things for 5 days. And at the end of those 5 days, you'll notice that you and your partner become closer. And once you reestablish the intimacy in the relationship, that in itself makes the sexual aspect of the relationship better.
I guess you just answered my next question, because I was just going to ask you, what if the sex is great, but the relationship isn't, or vice versa? You know, you're madly in love with your partner, but there is a bit of a lack somewhere, or a deficiency, or, you know, something that is not so pleasing. What do you do? So,
Okay.
yeah.
So there was a two-part question. So if the sex is great, but the relationship is not, try to work on the relationship, try to figure out why the relationship isn't so great, and then, you know, build on that. If the relationship cannot be fixed, cannot be mended, if you cannot figure out what the problem is, or if you two just are not compatible, I would suggest walking away from that. You can always find somebody else to have great sex with, but you don't want to be with someone based solely on the fact that the sex is great.
What if you're already married? I mean, this thing here is supposed to last till death do you part. I mean, you're not supposed to just, you know, that's what we're instructed to do, or not to do.
Right.
You know, and you don't just pick up on just simple little things and say, well, this area is not really kicking for me, so I'm out of here. I mean, you don't do that, do you?
No. So if they're already married, then you focus on trying to, like I say, reestablish the intimacy in the relationship. You take
Okay.
them back to why person. Why did you fall in love with this person? Why do you love this person? And you do vice versa. You ask the partner, why do you love your spouse? Why did y'all fall in love? And you help them rebuild on that. If the relationship is great and the sex is bad, I say don't focus on that, because you can teach. May take a while, it may not, but I feel like all people are teachable in the bedroom. And if you have two people in an amazing relationship and the only problem is sex, then you can go through coaching. You can go have a sex coach, you know, coach you on different things to do. You can become experimental, try different things, you know, and compromise might come into the play too. Like you might have one partner who is into like bondage, and then you might have one partner who is completely conservative, and that might be part of the reason why the sex isn't so great, because they're on two different spectrums on the pleasure on the, I'm sorry, they're in two different ends of the pleasure spectrum. So in this case, you have to find a happy medium. This conservative person will have to step out of their box and try something that this bondage person likes. And who knows, the conservative person might realize that they like that. And this bondage person might have to make the compromise and scale it back a little bit and just realize my partner's just not into being tied up and blindfolded and all of this. And that just might be something that they can't have in the sexual part of their relationship.
All right. So moving on to my next question. I mean, I know we've talked about a lot of good angles and a lot of good tips here and there, but don't you think there's still some couples who would just rather fake it, you know, so they could please their partners and, you know, be cynical about the whole thing and not necessarily be genuine about it, you know, just because they're looking to probably avoid any type of confrontation or misunderstanding, because maybe they've been with their spouse for quite a bit and they know their habits or just how they might react to certain things. And so they're just going to want to fake it through.
Yes, there are, unfortunately, some couples that do that. My advice is don't do that, because when you fake it, you're only cheating yourself. You're cheating yourself out of pleasure when you do that. So what you can do, and as a coach, how I coach clients is I tell them, you know, find out again what pleases you. Walk your partner through that. Talk your partner through that. Guide your partner through it. Whether it's sitting down and having a conversation and saying, hey, I really want to be with you, but whenever we have sex, you know, I don't like when you stick your tongue in my ear, but I do love when you nibble on my earlobe. And if you just if you find it difficult to be that direct with your partner, then again, like I mentioned earlier, during the actual sexual encounter, you can say things or use your body language to kind of cue them on what you like and what you don't like. And hopefully they'll pick up on it and things will get better.
Do you think that marriage vows are enough? For better, for worse, for richer and for poorer, till death do us part, and just a couple of others that we're made to recite to each other. But then you get home and you find out that there's so much more that you probably never even thought about, but they are prevalent. They exist in most homes and in most relationships. What would you say to a couple that are looking to get married?
Make sure that you're not basing the relationship solely off one aspect or another. So don't just marry somebody just because, oh, I love this person. Not just because a marriage is more than that. Things aren't always going to be great. You have to know that you can be with this person. You have to know that you're going to be able to withstand rough times. So ask yourself, if my partner, if I got married and my partner cheated on me, how would I handle that? Or if I got married and something happened, an accident, and my partner became paralyzed, like, would I still be there? Or is that enough to make me leave? And I feel like, if you can't answer tough questions like that, or if you don't think you would stick around, if things like that happen, then you may not be ready to marry that person.
Sounds good. We're going to take a little break. When we come back, we're going to talk about relationships with children and without. So stick around. We'll be right back. I want to talk a little bit about relationships or marriages with children, because after you've been married and you've enjoyed each other, you start creating replicas of you. You start making copies of you. You start having these dependents, these ones that walk around all day long. And until they're old enough to be on their own, they're dependent on you. They look up to you. They want to emulate your examples. They want to be, everything that you are. But then things happen in the relationship that has absolutely nothing to do with the kids, all right? It's just mom and dad that are having their own issues and differences. And sometimes it escalates and it boils over to where there's no salvage in the relationship. Nothing can be done about it at all. All right. Some of these kids have ended up being better off and some have been worse off. I know that you've encountered such scenarios, from your interaction with your clients over the years. What do you have to say about that?
That's it's kind of difficult to answer. There is no one size fit all answer for that. Most of these particular situations end up getting referred out to an actual therapist. Again, I'm only certified to just coach in certain aspects, but typically it boils down to the type of relationship each parent has with the kids, what has caused the issues within the marriage, and if they will be able to co-parent well if they happen to break up or split up, or if they stay together. Is it going to be, are they staying together just for the kids? Or are they staying together because they want to work it out? And also, if they stay together, are they going to create a toxic environment for the kids? Or will they still be able to maneuver and carry on like they had prior to when things got rocky?
So, do you think people get a little bit more focused on weddings in the first few years, or the dating phase of things, or the courtship phase of things, than the actual relationship, the marriage itself? Especially in this day and age, you have all these bridal shows on television. Every potential bride wants to wear the most glamorous gown or whatever, or have a great scenery and that sort of thing. You think people focus more on these things rather than the actual deal itself?
In my opinion, I believe that tends to be the case. And I say that because a lot of people have these big, extravagant, expensive weddings, and then a year or two later, they're divorcing or they're splitting up and separating. And then you have some people who either have these really small, intimate, inexpensive weddings, or they just go to the justice of peace. And these people have marriages that last, 25, 35 years or longer. So, and I'm not saying that's the case with everybody. I mean, you have people who have extravagant weddings and they still find a way to make it work. But I think for the most part, especially, in today's society, a lot of people do focus on the wedding as opposed to the marriage. It seems almost like, and I think this is where social media comes into play again. It seems like everybody wants to keep up with the Joneses, or at least make it look that way. So if I have to spend $40,000 or $80,000 as opposed to $5,000 to have this wedding, to make you think that I'm making all of this money and that I'm just so in love and my marriage is the bomb, then that's what I'm going to do if I'm that type of person who likes to, as these young people call it, flex on social media.
So in your opinion, who's the ideal partner? What do you look out for in an individual that you're potentially looking forward to spending the rest of your life with? How do you make your pick?
I feel like people should make a list. They should have, I think the best example for this is, and I always tell people, finding your lifelong partner is almost like buying a house. And people look at me sideways when I say that, but when you buy a house, what do? You have your list of must-haves. You have your list of deal breakers, right? So why would you not do that with your partner? And then when you're going around and you're looking at these houses, you're like, hey, the kitchen is not big. I want a big gourmet kitchen. If it does not have this big gourmet kitchen, despite the fact that you can later on renovate that and turn it into your dream kitchen, if that house doesn't come with that, then that's an automatic deal breaker, right? Mm-hmm. So if you have a partner, or if you're looking for a partner and you say, I don't want someone who smokes, then 9 times out of 10, if you could come across a guy that checks off everything else on your list, or a woman that checks off everything else on your list, but that one thing could be a deal breaker and you're going to walk away from it, right? So I tell people, when you're looking for a partner, make a list of your must-haves, make a list of your deal breakers, and then make a list of things that you can compromise, or that you're willing to compromise.
All right, so you've made this list and everything checked off, all right? So this is the guy. And then, the ceremony is over with, and then you're looking forward into your future. You start your life together. And then you find out about things that weren't readily apparent. You didn't notice before. There were no signs at all. People do change. Things happen, based on the longevity of the relationship. And unfortunately, sometimes it gets really abusive, verbally, psychologically, and physically. We've all seen these shows on TV where people end up losing their lives, and, to think that you're going to take out somebody that you once upon a time fell in love with, it's unthinkable. It's hard to imagine that. All right.
Right.
So I'm asking this, okay? When do you actually put a sock in it and say, this is my partner for life, all right? No matter what happens, it doesn't matter. It should never even cross your mind to have that negative thought, but unfortunately, it happens all the time. Some people aren't so lucky to get a good grip on themselves and say, no, I'm not going to touch this woman, or I'm not going to touch this man or abuse him or anything. But from my observation, it comes from both sides. Because men would always argue that women are antagonistic, and they know for a fact that there are certain things they're not supposed to say or do to draw a reaction from the man. And then the woman is arguing that, no, I deserve better. I deserve more respect. And so, there's also a reaction from the other side. Okay. Again, you're the coach, you're the expert, right? So talk to us about this situation here that I've just presented to you, because I know that it's nothing strange to your ears right now.
Right.
It does get dangerous. It does get bad. It goes bad, and this is something that once upon a time was a very loving, situation.
Right. So this gets tricky. And again, there is a fine line between a sex coach and a sex therapist. So once you reach this part where you're talking about abuse, whether it's physical, mental, psychological, or verbal, when it reaches that point, this is where they need to bring a therapist in and try to see if they can resolve those issues. Of course, I personally would not try to push anyone to stay in an abusive relationship. Like, I guess that individual would have to kind of weigh the pros and cons and figure out if they feel like it's worth it. I know I've heard people say sometimes it's not easy to leave an abusive relationship. I have never been in an abusive relationship, and I haven't worked with anyone who's expressed that they've been in an abusive relationship so far. So I really can't fully answer that.
But one thing I know for a fact is, and Marvin Gaye, if he was alive, he would testify to that, okay? Now, the power of touch,
Yes.
okay? The moment you could grab your partner and say, hey, come here, all right? Let's kiss this over with and let's make love. The healing touch when you're able to, feel the warmth, okay? I think it's able to quell a lot of that anger. And then it could lead to a great sex, because it always, after the fact, you feel a lot refreshed and relieved. And there's no way, you just made love and then you go back to fighting again. But sometimes, people drift too far apart for them to even have the energy to come back and get a little closer together for that healing touch. Right. So, when the sex part of things dries out of the relationship, how do people revive that or reignite that fire?
So that's where you have to go back to doing things that bring the intimacy into the relationship first. So I'm sorry.
People say that all the time, cast your mind back, think on the days when you were in the cinema, or, you went on a little holiday somewhere and everything was just so rosy. But you're at a point now where that's the last thing you want to think about.
Right. So then it becomes something. So then you have to ask yourself, do you want to make it work? If the answer is yes, then you kind of have to almost force yourself to start doing it. And it's like, once you develop this routine where you're doing things for the betterment of your relationship, like if you're making the effort, after a while, it won't feel so forced. It'll actually start to come natural, and it does take you back. And I know you said people say that all the time, like go back to how it was. But I think where some people get this marriage life a little twisted is they don't realize that marriage is work. And just like you had to work to get that person to the point to where they wanted to marry you, you still have to work after you say I do so that that person wants to stay with you.
Okay, so people are taking to all sorts of outlets to satisfy themselves or to take their minds away from things. Okay, people resort to vices. Some like to smoke, some like to drink, some like to binge eat just to take their minds away from things. Right. And today we have phone sex, we have all these cameras, it's not like it used to be where it was just audio. You can literally see who you're interacting with. These things are happening left, right, and center.
Yes.
What you got to say about that? I mean, is that helping us? Is that derailing us? Or is it something that's here to stay and there's nothing anybody could do about it?
I do feel like it's here to stay. And there isn't much that can be done with it, but I also feel like it is a derailer. Because you have to kind of be more disciplined. If you know that, let's say porn, for instance, I've known several situations where one partner was addicted to porn and it kind of ruined the relationship. If you know that your partner has an issue with you watching porn, why would you continue to do it? if you really cared about saving that relationship. You know what I mean? And again, this is where compromise comes into play. So when it comes to these outlets and these vices, you have to just kind of have self-control and know when to walk away, when to stop.
You said earlier that, experimenting all avenues in the bedroom shouldn't be a problem. I mean, two people who are in love should be able to discuss anything that pertains to their relationship if it makes it better.
Right.
So she's saying, well, I want to watch some porn, probably, get some tips from that. Or that's what he's doing. And then he wants to bring it back in the bedroom and say, hey, baby, can you do this and that? And then she's thinking, is this from your binge porn watching or if you flip the situation around? So, then again, this is my concern here. I mean, when people want to address the things that would help foster a good relationship. So there's no real, solution to, I guess what I'm trying to say is that, there's a number of things. There's so many different things that could either work or would not work, right?
Right. Yeah. Another thing that could take place too is if I'm with someone and they have an addiction or they have this outlet that they always turn to, if it is something that I can partake in, I would probably try to do it with them just to see, what is like, why is this an outlet for you? Let's go back to the porn scenario. So if I have a partner who is addicted to porn and I don't really care for it, I'm going to say, can we watch porn together? Because I want to see why you're so into porn. You know what I mean? And that's a compromise because I know I don't like it, but I know that my partner loves it. So here I'm going to try to watch it with you a few times and try to use that to connect with you on a different level.
So Nikita, you have all these different scenarios. People are different. Every relationship is different.
Absolutely.
But you're still a coach.
Yes.
How difficult is your job when you have to talk to different people? Don't get me wrong now, relationships have similarities all over the place. There's things that are commonplace everywhere. But when you get to the nitty-gritty of things, there are differences. And so you cannot say that what's going to work for couple A is going to work for couple B. So I guess my question is, how effective is premarital counseling? Or even if it's after the fact, you're already in a relationship, you're already married, is because you should be able to work on your own situations and fix your own problems, because the counselor may not necessarily know everything that's going on in your home. So what's your approach?
I think counseling is very effective because it gives you an opportunity to put everything out on the table and to do that in front of someone who isn't going to be biased about the situation, who can help you address any issues that are there, and possibly help you take a look into any possible issues that could arise. I also feel like you said, every relationship is different, and so is therapy. There are different methods to therapy. There are different methods to coaching. So one method might not work for couple A, but it'll work for couple B, and vice versa. There might be one route that I can take with couple A that's totally different. So I could tell, this one couple, hey, I think you guys need to take that walk together to help restore intimacy. Well, that's not going to work if both people in couple A hate being outside. So I can't tell you to go on a hike or go climb a mountain or do anything outdoorsy if neither of you are outdoorsy people. So that's a scenario where, one thing that I might tell this couple wouldn't work for the next couple. And again, that's where you get to know your clients. You establish this relationship with them. You learn them. You figure out what they like, what they dislike, what they're comfortable with, what they're not comfortable with. And you make a plan that's customized to that particular couple. And you help them work through any issues that they have.
Awesome. So you have an individual who's saying that, Well, as far as I'm concerned, I'm not going to get into bed with you until you put a ring on it.
Uh-huh.
And he's saying that, well, how am I supposed to know that you're the one for me? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so you go with one direction and say, okay, well, we're just going to abstain completely until this is all legal.
Mm-hmm.
And then after the fact, you find out that you're in a fix. Okay. And that right there is a major problem, so then I guess maybe they'll come to your store or resort to some other stuff like that. That's kind of iffy too, isn't it? I mean,
Yeah,
I know a
absolutely.
lot of counselors have encouraged that, and people just take it upon themselves to say, well, you're not touching me until after the fact.
Right. So in that scenario, you have to respect your partner's wishes. I personally, and this is my personal opinion, feel like, you wouldn't just go buy a car off the lot without test driving it. So it's really tricky when you get into that particular situation, because someone might be saying, I don't want to have sex until I'm married because of religious preferences. And I can't tell you to go against religion if that's something that you strongly believe. So that is a conversation that needs to be had. And again, this goes back to your list, your pros, your must have, your deal breakers. So if this guy is saying, my girlfriend won't have sex with me until we're married, but I don't want to get married until we have sex, that might be a deal breaker for him. And that's okay. It's okay to walk away and realize that this might not be the person for you. Are you going to miss out on a good person? Probably. But I mean, relationship, dating, all of this is all about risk.
I get that part. I'm going to quote something to you that, someone just dropped somewhere, and, people had all kinds of reactions to it. And
Okay.
I thought it was quite interesting as well. And so I want to share it with you right now. Okay. I want to share it with you, and I want to, hear your take on that. But first of all, Dr. Pope, when I was speaking with him earlier on, he said something to the effect that in the state of Georgia right now, or maybe in the city of Atlanta, the ratio, the man to woman ratio is 6-1.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, 6 women to 1 man. Okay, and you can agree with me that there are more women in this world than there are men. We can turn around and blame it on God because we didn't, I guess, gauge this. So it says some of us are in existence because our fathers cheated on their wives. And you just balk that cheating is bad? Did you know that if all men were honest and faithful, most ladies would be single and die without children? Let's appreciate cheating men also, including my dad. And that last part right there, that's what got me. Okay, because I'm from the other woman. Okay, so you could effectively say that my dad did some cheating, but I'm here. All right. As far as I'm concerned, I'm making a contribution to society. I don't think that I'm an outcast or such a bad person who does not deserve to be here. All right. And this was 1975. Okay. And today it's even worse, Nikita, and I'm sure you can agree. It's so much worse. I mean, what are these women doing? I mean, there's all these women out there who can get no love, can't even get laid.
You said, what are they doing? What are they doing wrong?
No, I don't think they're doing anything wrong by being in existence, by being in this world.
Okay.
I don't think that's wrong at all. Versus you still have some other really beautiful, gorgeous women who deserve all the best things in life, yet
they're single.
Right.
Right. That's a good question. That is a good question. And I know a lot of women who are very successful. They're nice women. They're not crazy. And I throw that in there because it's funny. Most guys say, to a beautiful woman, you're beautiful and you're single. Are you crazy? But I think it's a number of things. I think a lot of men are intimidated by successful women. I don't know why that's the case in 2020, but that seems to be the case from what I've seen a lot. Men don't really know how to be with a woman who is a provider, or a woman who has her stuff together and technically doesn't need a man. And I'm going to say that comes from men wanting to feel needed. And so when you approach a woman that is beautiful, and she has her own house, her own money, her own business, or a pretty good job, it's you as a man who feels like they need to be wanted, that you're not going to be wanted. Well, I'm sorry, needed. That you're not really needed. So I think that kind of is intimidating, and that turns them off. And then in turn, they go looking for a woman who is not as successful or not as well off as the woman before.
I think what that is just a man trying to be a man, and, no matter what their status is, they want to be the one with all the pride and the ego as far as the lady is concerned, or just a simple case of she's too gorgeous to be single. So they're not even making the attempt to approach these women, even though they may be single themselves. So I think that's the scenario here. I mean, it's another school of thought, don't you think?
And I've actually encountered women who say they don't want relationships. They don't want to be with anyone. They don't want to feel like they have to answer to somebody. They love to come and go as they please. I've met women who don't even want children, just enjoy having that freedom. And again, that's one of the differences between women now versus women, 80, 90 years ago.
This has been an interesting conversation, and I'm just blown away by what I've learned tonight coming from you. Ladies and gentlemen, I've been interacting with Nikita Grady. She's a relationship and sexuality coach. I'm sure you've learned quite a lot, just as I have. I'm going to put her information on this show. That way, if you need to contact her for any reason that pertains to your situation, then please feel free to do so. Thank you, Nikita.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed today.
Awesome. I'm glad you did. Thank you so much.